So then we are back with a more understanding on the time of the second tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation then comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Yishmaelic lineage. So then we can truly read and understand the time of the end, per Yishmael the prophet. We find in the restoration of the holy cities laid waste for many centuries, the cities of the Messiah then returning, and then obviously in conjunction with the Gentile level then comes the main, the first, second, and third kingdoms related with then the control and development of this base of the statue. What do we understand as far as Daniel is concerned from the original manuscripts? We find then the politician Daniel explaining the relationship of these main kingdoms, namely then China, Kingdom of the East, we find the Soviet Union, Kingdom of the North, and we find then Africa, the Kingdom of the South. These then being the main factors, the main points, or the movements of trade of the market of the world. These means those kingdoms are then the main say-so of this period of time. Then shortly after comes then the responsibility of the Yishmaelites, also caught in their own workings because of the 1,000 years of deceit. We understand there are many plans of the Yishmaelites in terms of building islands and then building areas of resorts and so on and so forth, but they have not counted that the sea level then is rising, and their plans of extension of the land then is going to be absolutely under the water. Because we must analyze then the end of times as a scientific situation, and also understand the autumn feast and the way it starts. So then, from the time of the restoration period, during this era, or then the time where the world is reflecting or then understanding, leaving the time of the seat of 1,000 years, where then Christianity does not exist. It was concocted. Christianity simply does not exist, because came an understanding from the Greco country. So when you read, for instance, Christo or Christos, those can be either plural or singular related with the Spirit. But when you lined up this understanding with the Scripture as Tabernacling is concerned, then does not make any sense. As we understand, the midman was generated because of the lack of paying taxes. So then, from this viewpoint, we can simply concoct a very important understanding. The main country or kingdom dealing with Christianity is going to be obviously then the Soviet Union. There are many areas of the world where there are spiritual factions or the spiritual areas of the world where then the spiritual world then functions. As we understand from the Scripture, the movement of the Babylonian kingdom, they have many distinct areas. Some of them are obviously related with then Christianity. And then we understand as an understanding of filtering the entire situation of these main kingdoms, namely the East and then the North and then the South, we can understand Christian related countries are going through obviously the Soviet Union prior of reaching China. Because what is the main objective of the kingdom of the South is to produce ores, produce then the main bulk of mining. The most riches you find then in Africa. Coal, you find petroleum, you find ores, you find gold, you find many kinds of rare minerals, where those mostly are spoken for. Those belong to China. Because the factory of the world requires then a great number of these mining in order to maintain the factory going. So then there is no more time for China wasting their precious time with other countries involved with other kinds of beliefs where they don't have much in return. Obviously, China is going to start treating the Kingdom of the South with more rigor as far as what they can provide the Kingdom of the South with equipment, with what is required to get then the ores or the minerals out of the soil. As far as we can understand, the most robust equipment we can ever find is always the Soviet equipment, making then the Kingdom of the North notorious for its robust equipment. So then we start our quest from Daniel, the 11th chapter, where he explains the base of the statue, mixing iron with the clay. But they don't mix. We understand that Germany can't do much because they are entangled with the euro. And then the euro is going to be dismantled because it's a section of the economy related with the subsystem, when we understand of yet the Chinese system coming in the near future. There are signs already, for instance, of New Zealand having a relationship with China and making direct relations with as far as the exchange, or the money exchange, or then trade exchange directly with China. Very wise. Because they understand the U.S. monetary system is going down. We have 36 months to get at least our taxation, and then this taxation exact, and making sure then the government of U.S. is in line with the freighters because of the tracking system. Since we are then a Christian nation, and then unfortunately most of us were deceived during the time of the 1,000 years of deceit, we have to go through the Soviet Union because it's a form of filtering. As far as reaching China directly, we won't have this privilege anymore, because China is going to be involved with the most production of the world's market as far as what produce, and then the production is going to be extremely big, and I have to count their time very precisely. So they won't have any more time to visit with the leaders of the world anymore. Has to be filtered through these couple of other kingdoms. There is a kingdom producing ores, very important for factories. You have the Kingdom of the North involved with a system of religion that never existed. So then the North is responsible for the equipment, for instance, transportation, mining, sometimes ships. But they have to start believing then their role as then the base of the statue is then explaining from the instructions how they should relate with each other. And then the rest of the world, obviously, there are only a few options. Coal, for instance, very important, and then petroleum. Those are extremely important because those are related with then energy. And then the world won't have any more luxuries. For instance, the sons of Yishmael wasting their time building islands with rocks and sand over there in the midst of the ocean. The ocean is rising very rapidly and is going to wash away. So then the Creator has another plan for the Yishmaelites, as we can understand. Obviously then, their input as far as the main bulk of crude being then distributed around the world for the purposes of more trade. That's why then we find Daniel explaining knowledge would increase, and then we later with what the Messiah has said, and the freighters of the earth. So then we understand very precisely what goes on as far as religion when it's mixed up, what it means then further relationship with China, for instance. They won't have any more time to play around with other nations. And we understand because the system is coming very shortly, and their very rigor in understanding this plan is going to define their future. Because not only they must understand ports, for instance, must be enlarged, and then obviously more depth. Then their sources of petroleum, coal, and how they're going to deal then with agriculture, what can import, what can export. They won't have any more time to talk with other nations. So then we can expect a huge change coming then in the future. That's why then the IMF predicted 2 years ago. They would last then 5 years maximum of our system if we would not change our economic status. And the change comes from then obviously what the Messiah has said in Galah 1:8 or Revelation 1:8, because it's related with the time of the restoration period. The first, second, and third chapters, we understand other areas of other chapters, they were mixed up when the translator began to translate the holy documents, but did not understand times and seasons. But those who do understand times and seasons, they can locate precisely where those Megillas belong. And chapter 1:8 belongs to our time. So then the Messiah explained many areas of then the freighters of the earth. He's explaining those people giving directives. So then, based on what the Messiah has said, based on what Daniel has said of the 11th chapter, based then on what we understand as far as then Daniel being a tradesperson, a politician, and then later explaining the tabernacling, it is very evident that religion is playing a big part of it. So we have to understand what it means, the filtering of religion out of trade. Very important. For 1,000 years plus, people were always brainwashed, thinking, oh, because God has favor upon you, that's why then you are evolved with riches, or you are prospering, when there is no relation with it. There is absolutely no relation with it. There are areas we must understand. A person who then was absolutely scoundrel during the time of the 1,000 years of deceit, they have done very nicely. It's not the way of the Creator. That's why He has not then chosen any of these people or systems to make up His end of time, including the Gentiles. Then we find ourselves then dividing the planet with many kinds of religions. And some of them, they must be filtered through in order to reach another area of politics and trade. So we can easily understand Christian nations, they are going through the Soviet Union because it's a form of filtering. They provide the basic equipment, very strong, robust mining equipment, and then the main trade then going to the Soviet Union as far as the primary decisions. Until the sons of Yishmael, then later, they come with the say-so as far as petroleum is concerned. So there is a lot of movement of these areas where we find ourselves then understanding the birthing of the southern kingdom. We understand the system coming from China. We understand then the system of China then going in every country, becoming then obviously a reference point from country to country, nation to nation. Then as countries they come out of poverty, as we understand the Soviet Union, they are already leaders of the BRIC. So try to understand where this is going. As leader of the BRIC, including Brazil, Soviet Union itself, and then China, India, and then South Africa, you can already understand the filtering system going through the Soviet Union. Obviously, China at some point, they're going to stop their relations as far as visits because of the great economical plan of the near future. As they launch their system, they have to understand this factor. They won't have any more time to play around with other countries. They have to produce. Because not only people are going to invest in their system, the demand for the products is going to be absolutely, in quote, astronomical. The very fact of the system is going to push them further of production, and they won't have any more time. So then, this is where the area of the Soviet Union then comes into play. In other words, then they're going to find what would be then the most profitable areas where they can relate to China to take an example of what they are given as example, and then they evaluate the introduction of these new areas of economical development in their own plans so they can make the proper adjustments. But as far as China making individual adjustments as it was in the past, it's no longer the case. Because the Messiah already indicated, and the freighters of the earth, indicating an absolutely trades viewpoint. What we are observing from China at the moment, besides being the factory of the world, is also a lot of politics. A lot of politics playing around. But it's coming a time where they won't be playing any more politics. They're going to be absolutely devoted to trade. And politics are going to be given to another section, another kingdom, where then the diplomatic understandings of what to produce. For instance, what's the potential? The increasing of the potential, the securities involved, and then the primary understandings or the preliminary area, or then the filtering of those new ideas and new development is going through the Soviet Union. Because they are then in charge of the BRIC ever since last year from December. So then we can understand how China is going to be then the factory, the Soviet Union is going to be the sorter, sorting out ideas and politics and so on and so forth, then filtering it through, straining what is bad, lining up what has a big potential, and then Africa providing what is required. But obviously, these then they come together often amongst themselves and then speak what they must, because they have the forward motion during this time. Only make sure they leave space for the Yishmaelites, because then at some point they are taken over. We can understand, for instance, areas of importance, areas of development, but then the Yishmaelites, based upon what they've learned from the Creator, from Ibrahim, and the relationship of Ibrahim and the Creator, and the moral code developed by the Yishmaelites for centuries, those are going to be used when they determine what nation then is going to get crude. So make sure they have these understanding also, because along with the Yishmaelites comes Tabernacling. Tabernacling won't have an impact with the world. They have a direct impact with the future plans regarding of the Yishmaelites. So then we can understand then Ibrahim as then a person from the original manuscripts, from the original relationship with the Creator, in maintaining the integrity of this relationship. Nations are more than welcome to come to the gates of the holy cities, but as far as they should receive from the Creator, then it's a situation of asking. But we do understand that many nations of Asia Minor during the time of Shaul, they were greatly benefited from these asking. So then, since we understand this factor, there are lots of work to do. Not wasting time in junky projects. Make sure they understand ports must be extended. Ports must be then dredged. Must make sure there is enough depth for the big ships. We understand then the Panama Canal is going to be then available next year. So lots of work around the world. And only have this in mind, the freighters of the earth are in charge. And as far as the filtering system of east, south, and north is defined, we are already finding then a section of the kingdom related with the production, making sure solid plans of positive outcome with positive growth only are going to be considered. So halfway plan does not go through China anymore. Only the absolutely certain plans of absolutely steady growth goes through China. It has to be filtered. Comes then the work of the northern kingdom. And then in order for the northern kingdom to get the plans then on paper, they must have solid understanding of the production of ores, mining, what it takes, energy, coal, petroleum. So they are then guiding these area or this vein or this flow of this energy in order to maintain the factory and going. Then the South produces what it must. And there is a continuous conversation with then the kingdom of the East, North, and South. The West has no part in any of it. The West is simply, they do what they should be doing a long time ago. Taxing properly and make sure they use their resources wisely. Because there is no plan for the West during this period of time of the restoration, other than making sure their subsistence then is properly managed. This is what we can gather from the instructions. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.